Hi, this is Alan Thicke. You should be checking out ShowbizMonkeys.com. I'm not sure why, but it's my job to tell you.
Around this town, I'm alright. Around this town, I'm alright. I mean, no consequence when you playing with the fire. Move to the left, man.
While a lot of people of my generation know you as Dr. Jason Seaver on Growing Pains, and those a little younger may know you as Robin Thicke's dad, you have a long history in television and music dating back to the early 70s. Can you talk a little bit about your early years? What first made a kid from small-town Ontario interested in show business?
I think it's because I failed at a couple other things. I would have been happy to be a sports writer and cover the Hamilton Tiger Cats for the Hamilton Spectator.
Okay.
And not so much that I failed, but they didn't have a course in journalism at the time at University of Western Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
So although I did play football there and then later wrote for the paper, it wasn't really any formal training in that field. And then I also tried theology. I was in a denominational college at Western the first year, and then went from there to pre-med, which I've always felt was God's way of punishing me for considering the clergy, because I didn't have the stomach for pre-med. So I had tried all of that early on, and then finally ended up performing in a bunch of university plays and mostly emceeing their variety shows and singing in a band. And so that set me up for a shot at the CBC, and I did that for a couple of years after college. And then tried it in L.A., and my first career in Los Angeles was writing for other people. I wrote a lot of the variety shows in the 70s and 80s. I wrote for Flip Wilson and Bill Cosby, Richard Pryor. Wrote some shows for Norman Lear.
Oh, wow.
And that's really what was my craft and my career in those early days. And then I ended up hosting the Alan Thicke Show in Canada, and that led to a turkey of a show called Thicke of the Night in the States, but that led to Growing Pains, and that's probably where you pick up the story.
Right, well, I actually did want to touch on Thicke of the Night a little bit, because I'm a little too young to have watched it when it aired, but thanks to YouTube, I've been able to watch some clips, and you mentioned you called it a turkey of a show. I know it didn't get treated well by critics, but one thing I can tell is you seem to have a lot of fun making it.
It was fun, and to be accurate about it, the numbers, if I had those kind of ratings on a late night show today, they would name a province after me. It was, we did ratings that are higher than what a lot of the only ones higher nowadays would be Leno and Letterman. The numbers we did back then were bigger than what Kimmel gets and what Fallon gets and what Conan gets and what Ferguson gets. But back then it was just a two-man universe. It was Johnny Carson was the king of the hill.
Yeah.
I was the guy that they chose to go up against them, and people said it couldn't be done. I was the guy they chose to prove it, I guess. And so I got my ass kicked, but again, those numbers in today's marketplace would have been considered heroic.
Right after that, I mean, actors talk about a successful sitcom run kind of being like the show business holy grail. Did you realize as it was happening how successful and long-lasting Growing Pains would be?
Yeah, we were a hit pretty early on, and spent much of our tenure in the top 10, sometimes top 5, even a couple of weeks at number 1. And one of the advantages of being on a show that was on in the 80s and 90s is that the television universe again was smaller then, mm-hmm. And the advantage was when you have a hit show, you really get some large numbers of people following you, and then theoretically they stay with you as part of your fan base for years afterwards. Yeah. Nowadays, a show like American Idol is considered a hit with 15 million viewers. We used to have 25 million. And so if those people stay with you for a couple more shows or other activities, including, when you go out and do stand-up or host events and make speeches, you've got a larger fan base to deal with if you built that in the 80s.
And in recent years, you've kind of been able to play a little bit with that image, most notably for me anyway, appearing as a recurring version of yourself on How I Met Your Mother, and you've also done some web videos. Is it fun to be able to be a little over the top and silly at this point in your career?
It is. I'm doing a pilot next week, in fact, for Showtime down here that is way over the top. The opening scene, this is not a Jason Seaver scene. I start the show getting a blowjob from Missy Pyle, who was the blonde actress at the beginning of The Artist, if you saw that movie. Mm-hmm. And the first shot is a close-up on my face being romantically pleasured by this person hiding under my desk, Monica Lewinsky style. So anybody expecting to see Dr. Seaver in that show better have a drink first.
Yeah, well, Showtime has been kind of an interesting place for a lot of actors to be able to go and kind of do things a little more risque.
Yeah.
Now, you spent most of your career in the U.S., but you keep coming back to Canada. Is it important for you to keep involved with Canadian projects?
It is. I'm a citizen. I have family in Canada. I'll always be a Canadian. My heart and some of my tax money remains there. And so I'll come home, anytime they'll have me.
Hosting your own shows and specials in the past, as well as having the songwriting history that you do, kind of makes you the perfect person to host a spoof of a TV variety show for the Winnipeg Comedy Festival.
I hope so. I've hosted a number of comedy festivals before, including I did Just for Laughs. I did the Showtime Comedy All-Stars a few years back. So that's fun for me. And what it does is, it's like, as you said, hosting a variety show years ago. It allows me to get a few laughs and get off a few lines and then leave the heavy lifting to some other talented people. And it helps me see what young talent is out there. So, it really is a pleasurable experience, and I look forward to it.
Are there any of the Winnipeg Comedy Fest performers in particular you're looking forward to seeing, or are you not yet familiar with who's on the bill?
There's a couple that I'm not familiar with, and a couple others, names they ran by me that I did know, and that sounded like fun to see them again.
So what can people expect from you if they get tickets to the show and head down to the Pantages Theater?
Well, frankly, I think the producers have come up with a really funny idea, a theme for the whole show, which is a spoof on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, etc., and telethons together. I mean, telethons have kind of fallen out of disfavor. Mm-hmm. We haven't seen as many in recent years as we used to. So the idea of reviving the telethon format and the purpose, the campaign, the crusade of the telethon being to add Twitter followers to my account seems like kind of a funny satirical idea.
Yeah, I noticed when we posted at the Comedy Fest launch about how you and a few others were coming to the city for the festival. You retweeted our post, but then I looked and you didn't have that many Twitter followers yet compared to some others. So we got to get those numbers up.
That's true. I'm new at it. I told the producers that. I said I'm fairly new at this Twitter business. I have like around 3,000 or 4,000, and I said it might be funny to make that the big purpose of the telethon for me. In the same way. I mean, some people will be looking to get rid of Coney the Barbarian, and then others will. My big issue will be to get more Twitter followers. All tongue-in-cheek, of course.
Oh, yeah. Well, the last question I wanted to ask you is just for people listening who aren't going to be in Winnipeg in April, what other projects do you have on the go right now? You mentioned the Showtime series. Is there anything else people should check out?
I just did a pilot for Global and for a kind of an amusing game show up there, and I guess we'll know by we'll know by April whether that got picked up. And I'm writing a humor column for the Huffington Post called the Boomer Monologues, and that's been interesting and fun to do. And that's spawned a radio show and a book that I'm going to do. And I'll be doing some work with Moses Neimer's new television entity called Zoomer, which is a spin-off from his Zoomer magazine, and that'll happen probably this summer.
ShowbizMonkeys.com.